Hey, I guess, oh, so the tally light does work. So thank you, Des. The bottom line is, and this is the last you'll hear from the commercial, we need money to do all this, and I hope that you'll see what we're using this for and major projects scheduled for 2024. So, okay, so we've got about a dozen in the room. I was going to say originally we had exactly a dozen. I don't know if that makes us the Dirty Dozen, but like that old movie. But we had a few more come in, and I believe we have some online. Do we have an online audience, John?
Yes, we 23.
23 online, okay. So all of you that didn't come down here to Cherry Creek Schools, you're slackers. The roads weren't that bad, but no, they... I am on number 1, I believe. Okay, there we go. So I got my slides. So we're going to talk today about DMR 201, and Professor Willem said, well, let's go to the next level of DMR. So that's what we're doing today. I'm going to start out with kind of what's happening to put all these signals together. And then Tristan's going to talk about what if it's not voice, what if it's data? And people think, well, that's pretty simple, but it's not as simple as it looks on the surface. And then Paul is going to talk about the vocoder of how we put all this together. So, being it's early in the morning, it's cold, we're going to start this out with, let's see if it's not working. It's not moving forward. So, okay. I'm going to talk a little bit this morning about the power of cheese. So, and this little clicker, after all of the things.
Some cookies you left Santa.
I didn't leave on cookies, I left cheese.
Behold the power of cheese.
Okay. Behold the power of cheese. You're saying to yourself, what does this have to do with DMR?
Whether or not synchronization, the repeater.
And are we getting a question from Zoom or?
No, that was somebody bleeding over.
That was somebody bleeding over. Okay. So what does the power of cheese have to do with DMR? So I kind of said the same thing to myself. So I started researching. Where do we go when we want to research something? We go to Google. So I found that cheese is a powerful way to deliver essential nutrients. Okay, and somewhere in here I brought a cheese box. Ooh, I should have used that as a prop. I got one at Starbucks with the apples and grapes and cheese. That's the power, but that's probably not the power of cheese. And it says here, many consumers are seeking cleaner labels, minimal ingredients, organic, lots of varieties, and there's even cheese for lactose intolerant. Thankfully, I'm not, but if you are, there's cheese for you. But Google, you let me down. You didn't tell me what the power of cheese is. I need to know the power of cheese. And, okay, we're throwing this laser pointer away, but I think, oh, well, the little zoomer thing works. So I had to define the power of cheese. And my definition, but do I have the little zoomer thing with this one? Oh, well, but what if I want the little zoomer thing?
Well, then I have to charge you.
So my definition of the power of cheese is, let's embrace some new concepts. Let's do something different. Let's create things that we really need, that have a purpose, that we'll have fun building. And let's build community around it. Let's serve our community. The power of cheese is doing something that's a little bit different, a little non-traditional. as it says here, that's the power of cheese. Now, let me see if this thing is going to work. This one doesn't work either. Give me the other one back, John. So, really, for us, it's what we did, not how we did it. When we look back to the 1990s, and John is...
Go back.
Okay, leave it alone. I'm just going to use this. Okay. You're killing me, Smalls. You're killing me. So, okay. If we look back 30 years, we were all analog based. It really was complicated to connect all of our stuff together. We had little islands of stuff that didn't work, and we didn't know what was going on. And I pulled a little graphic of the 1990s, and I was telling them last night, I actually had a chance passing meeting with one person on this slide. But if you want to know who that was, you'll have to ask later. You'll have to pay attention. Okay. I think, but we look to today. We've got an IP backbone. We have really good diagnostics. And we can do things today that we only dreamed about 30 years ago. That's the power of cheese. That's our cheese. Just get those things away from me. We can try that one if you want, but... No, but... They should be able to go in parallel, right? I like the little bubble that I was maybe going to use, but... The bubble worked.
That's why it's dead today.
Oh, no. Okay, it's not. This one was kind of working, so let's... Nothing ever works properly during a snowstorm. So, with all the backbone we've been doing, which is why we're always groveling for money on the air, and that's expensive. That's the power of cheese that's brought us forward. So we've got our backbone. So this is kind of review. When I talked with Willem about the curriculum today, he said there will be a test at the end and I should go over the prerequisites. So these are the prerequisites. So a big part of this whole thing that you're going to hear about today is DMR. But what makes this possible beyond a local little repeater? It's our IP backbone. And so as I said here, it was first, we kind of call, I guess I should say if I was Al Gore, RMHAM invented the ham backbone. No, we first implemented it. We had a lot of other clubs join in, and I'm sure I've missed one or two here. It's really a big group effort. Even though we call it the RMHAM backbone, it's more. It's us. It's our backbone. We can go to the site without going to the sites. It links everything we have together. We can send All-Star voice linking through it, analog signals. We can send digital DMR. We can send D-Star. We can send Fusion. We can do IP telephones. We can send WinLink. It's just data that we're sending from point A to point B, and we're going to see how DMR pulls into that in a little bit. What did I put here? Analog and digital, and when we do things like field day, we can attach to it and send signals to places, assuming that's allowed in the field day rules, but there's some limits. But when we went up to WWV and celebrated their 100th anniversary, we were connected to the RMHAM backbone right there on the grounds of WWV and all sorts of things, ARES deployments. So we have this big network, and this is a simplified view of it, where I put in here a couple of examples. And because I guess those, and I don't know if we've got the Zoom audio up, but those in the room, do you have any guess how many sites or locations we're sending data to? I'm hearing 50. Do you think that's high or low? I think it's low. You think it's low? What do you think? Maybe 100? Maybe 100. Okay. John, do you know, or Willem, if you're... Total sites? Well, so John and I were in the car one day driving to a conference or something, and we realized we have 50 remote radio sites, mountaintop sites alone, or tower sites. And then when we add all of the other support pieces, what'd you say, John? It's closer to the 100?
243 according to the FDB.
How many, Willem?
243.
243 places. I've shown you maybe 30 here on this, this map. So every one of them has an IP address, as I put up here, Lee Hill, Thornton. These are just, some of these are accurate, some of these are not. I just made stuff up. But every site has an IP address space, and every device that has an Ether connection has an IP address. So it's pretty simple. We just send the data from point A to point B, right? And those of you that aren't in the room here are seeing people go, no. So how do we take this DMR technology? This is part of our refresher, and I believe this is part of this is a slide that I stole from Mike Conga, who I believe stole it from me, who I then originally stole it from somebody else, but it keeps evolving with information. But
Really old presentation that was at the Dayton.
okay, he says at Dayton, so maybe we stole from the same place. It's been stolen so many times, this upper right, that I don't even know who originally did it, but it's nice colored graphics. So in the old days, we had 2 analog repeaters, which is on the upper piece here, kind of a bluish and a dark blue gray. We'll call it blue and gray repeaters. We'd have to combine them together at the RF level into an antenna, and out would come 2 conversations. Well, with DMR, it's time division multiple access, TDMA. So what we do is send one person, the other person, and we're constantly switching back and forth every 20 milliseconds to make this lower right. It says slot 1, slot 2, and so one repeater, as it says here, is doing the work of 2. So these are our repeaters. This is a cutoff version, but we call it the pizza box repeater, the Motorola SLR 5700. It's a 50-watt repeater. It's in a 1-rack unit. And if I see people taking photos, if you want the slides, I have them here on my little Kenwood thumb drive. Just remove the battery and you get a USB. So this pizza box repeater is 1-rack unit, and it fits nicely in there at 50 watts. There's a AC power supply to take 120 volts, and there's a DC input, there's an Ether jack, and there's obviously RF connections. It's really that easy. What we spent a lot of time building in the past, analog repeaters, it's all right there in one box. And if you want a little bit more power and you want a little bit more hardening, the Motorola MTR 3000 is down below. So we use both of these. If we're doing a really far away site that has to be 100 watts, we'll almost always put the Motorola 3000 in. It's just, when you look at this thing, you see a lot of, and let me see if I think this part is working. Nope. Oh, there we are. This 3000 down here, look at all this aluminum and heat sink. I don't know if that's better. I think it is. As a radio designer, having lots of heat sink is usually better. But this guy is going to be much harder to cool than this guy down here. So, so we tend to put these at the sites that need more power or a little further away. If we're really space limited, this little one rack unit pizza box works really well. Yeah, I think it's just, they forced me to take a driver update. So let's look at what's behind the curtain. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Behind the curtain, now we're getting into DMR 201, is IP Site Connect. Some of you may have heard of it. Have you guys? I'm seeing some nods in the room. I even see some of you on Zoom going, yup, and some going, huh? So what do you need to know about it? Well, if you're a network planner, you need to know everything about it. And it's taken me 10 years, and I still don't know everything about it. Why? Because this is custom to Motorola repeaters. When we buy a Motorola repeater, we've essentially bought a license to use this, and this is what connects them all together. This is what makes the IP talk to each other. If you're an operator, you only need to know a few things. Conceivably, you could walk into here knowing nothing about it and still be successful. But if you know a little bit about this, it helps. So IP Site Connect is basically a protocol that connects 2 repeaters or maybe even up to 15. I know 16 is a hard limit, I think, in their software, but they say 15 or 14, and that's really based upon the capacity of the IP connection that's between them. If you were to put these things all on a big ether switch and put them all in one room, why would you put 15 repeaters in one room? You'd have plenty of capacity because it's running on a piece of wire. But when we're running through our network, and we'll see a little bit further, we do have some bottlenecks. So IP connections from our backbone transport the signal. Linking is easy. So remember we were talking about cheese? This is the power of cheese. Doing something different to achieve a goal. If we just did the old analog linking way, we'd still sound like we're using 2 chunky soup cans and a piece of string for our links. And we all remember when that happened. And when we used that on like Colorado Connection or even the old Colorado Repeater Association when they were RF linked, it didn't sound good. Now, with everything running through the backbone, it sounds great. The power of cheese. So, IP Site Connect. So this is a lot on this slide. Tried to make it big enough for you to read. But I'm looking here in the example at and I should be able to use my little things, so those online, up here at this sample of our IP networks. These are 4 of our actual IP Site Connects here. And so with IP Site Connect, there's always a master repeater and there's some peer repeaters. So this is the part of behind the curtain. If you pick up on some of this, great. You'll be a better operator. You'll know what's happening when things aren't happening. When things aren't going right, you'll have a clue into this, because we've tried to design our network for 5 nines, 99.9999% reliable. Unfortunately, occasionally, especially during storms, it turns out to be 9 5s of reliability. It can go the other way, but we work really hard to not have that. So we have in here peers and masters. And all this really means is in every IP Site Connect, there's a master. That master is responsible to create this routing table down here. And this is just a conceptual of it. And distribute it to everybody else on its IP Site Connect up here. So in this example, the Buckhorn repeater is our master, and that's actually who is our master. Well, who's on first, right? That's the repeater that is our master on the northern IP Site Connect. So it's up there, and whenever we turn another repeater and connect it into the ether jack, we've programmed in to it to say, hey, go up here to Buckhorn and check in, kind of like the receptionist. Then it says, oh, okay, we've got a new repeater, and it's down in Cheyenne, Wyoming. I'm going to list you as a peer, and I'm going to tell everybody else about you. Hey, everybody. This one just joined the room, joined the conversation, just like a chat room. So we create this table here. And this works better if you do it looking forward. And so we've created this table. And I'm trying to think, I think I have it on the next side. So whenever a voice call on DMR or a data call, is happening, and do feel free to interact, and we'll get you a microphone so those online can hear you. But whenever a voice or a data call is made, that repeater knows everybody else in the room. And we'll show how these calls go forward. Yes?
Yeah, I'm just curious why Buckhorn Master is on a different subnet.
It's at a different site.
Oh, is that, okay.
Yeah.
Every site has a different subnet.
So we're asked here, why is Buckhorn on a different subnet? And that's a great question. And this is, I believe, the real IP address, perhaps. And so 10.16.8, and we're going to use our routing, the routers in the RMHAM network to get 10.30.20.30 to route to this other, to 10.30.21. You'll notice in here we tend to usually have, everything ends in .10, doesn't it? Well, so what we tend to do is put like devices together on a subnet, or excuse me, the last octet of this, such that our brains know when I go to .10, I'm usually going to the first DMR repeater at a site. When I go to .5, I'm going to a DC power strip. When I go to .3, I'm going to an AC power strip. Our CBridge is .30. If we had multiple CBridges, they'd be .30, .31 if they were at the same site. If they were at different sites, maybe we have a second CBridge, and that's at 10.0.0.30. It's just helpful for us. So, so this is the IP address of every repeater site. And you notice over here in this time slots, in this example, I've said the Akron repeater is only on time slot 2 connected to the whole world here. And Cheyenne is only time slot 1. This is not actual to Northern. This is where I'm deviating a little bit. But so we have this routing table.
So Doug, if I can just jump in real fast. Those machines are all on different subnets. So every site is a /24. And so they just happen to be named by what club is actually primarily responsible for it. So in order to get from one site to the other, there's a whole bunch of routing involved.
Yes. And I'm trying to, there we go. I was trying to change my view here so that I could do a little better presentation. Okay, yes, so we're counting on the routing of our network, and we're going to see a little bit of an example of that in a moment. So this is a little larger example. This is the actual Rocky Mountain Central, or at least a portion of it, for our IP Site Connect number 2. Now, you don't have to know. It has a number in it. What did Mike Lozano, tell us in his talk about numbers in DMR? don't use them. But as a network planner, I have to use them, unfortunately. No, Mike has given you, and he's in the back of the room if you can't hear him, he says, I never said never, but he's got good advice. Focus on the name, not the number, but we've got to use numbers. So this is the second line is our second IP Site Connect that RMHAM has defined. And it shows here, you'll notice a green, okay. This, in this view, doesn't work. Okay, I've got to make one. Come on. Well, okay. You notice up on the RM Central Thornton, there's a green bar, and all the rest have red bars. So that's the way of the network saying Thornton is actually where the call, the active call that we're listening to right now, is originating. And all the red lines is everywhere we're routing the call to. You notice the red line and the green line is on the bottom of the line there. That signifies to us with our network tools, and that's on time slot 2. If it was on time slot 1, it would be on the top. You don't have to worry about that, but that's something that, have you ever misprogrammed your radio and you got a call from John or I or Mike and, hey, you're misprogrammed? This is one of the ways that we can easily and quickly identify that. So, so we're making a call on Thornton. Thornton is actually, there's 10 actual repeaters in this list. So what's happening is Thornton is, although it's the master, it's where the call's originating. It's sending 10 parallel IP streams out. Each is not as much as 50 kilobits, but I don't know the exact number, but that's a good planning number, which says how much data is flowing out of Thornton into the rest of the network. 50 times 10. 500 kilobits. That's not a lot of data, but if we've got a microwave link that's kind of having some trouble, that's a lot of data. If this is a repeater in one of our vans, our QRV vans, that's running on satellite internet, we've got to uplink 500 kilobits rather than 50. So you'll see some of the things we do. So I put here, and it's Christmas time, so I put the Radio City Music Hall Rockettes up there. And what's the fundamental feature of the Rockettes? They all kick together. If one is out of phase and out of time, it doesn't look good, does it? That's the same thing here. All of these repeaters act as one. Whatever talk group we're using on this goes to everybody. That's important. This is one of the important parts now as a user. When you get on one of our IP Site Connects, whatever you send into that repeater is going, for talk group, it's going to be reflected, in this case, to the other 9. I believe it's 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. The other 10. So there's 11 elements in this. So you say, hey, I'm on 720, which is central. I'm on time slot 2 for Thornton. That's where you're supposed to be. Thank you for following directions. But if you're like me and you have one of those T-shirts that says does not follow directions, and you say, well, I thought it was 620, and you put 620 on the Thornton time slot 2, what's going to happen? It's going to send 620 to all, it's going to be carried on all 11 repeaters. Are you going to hear me? No, because your radio is looking for 720. It's like you're running a different PL tone on analog. So this is kind of an important thing. So I make this call, And I wonder why this, okay. I think it's, I'm gonna just adjust my screen very quickly here. And pardon me online. We normally have a little different screen arrangement here. And there we go. I'm going to use the slideshow, and now okay, now I can see it. So is this call only on this central IP site connect? So far, from everything we've taught you, the answer is yes. But it's not. This is an actual shot of a portion of our CBridge. The CBridge is the device that magically links all these together. And you can see up here the same call. And that one translates to this line here. But you see all those other reds? We're also sending this to Lookout Mountain, West Creek, Rangeley, Lookout Mountain, VHF. We have the VHF and the UHF. Any potential QRVs that we have running out there, those are our remote vans. 19 repeaters we're actually sending this call to. And this is, as I said here in the purple box, how does the call bridge across these multiple IP connections? It's with our CBridge. And the hint here is, if you look up here, you see all these CBridge 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So the CBridge actually acts, it can act like 100 repeaters, or 50 repeaters with time slot 1 and 2, so 100 combinations that says, I'm going to bridge 100 things together. It's a 100 tentacle octopus. So let's take a peek at it. So we've got our CBridge here in this example, and right up here you can see it's a similar view. And I tried to keep this, because this thing is incredibly complicated and complex. So in this case, we're making a call on Thoridan. Remember what I said about the line was on the bottom? It's not on the bottom anymore, is it? It's on the top, which says means it's on time slot 1, which is where, just grab the presentation off there so you don't have to do photos. Oh, okay. I was just giving him the slides. And we are going to put those on the website, I believe. Okay, the slides are on the website if you want to follow along. So if you're not in the room and can't get my little thumb drive, it's on the website. So this is a call on the top, which means it's time slot 1, which you notice here I've moved to, say, talk group 700, which is Rocky Mountain wide, or the full Rocky Mountain talk group. So this now is being bridged to a lot of places. How did it get there? So on the screen on the bottom here, this area, you'll see the northern, central, Fremont, southern, Four Corners, southern. And you also see a little piece of Lookout UHF that I cut off the example on the top. What we've done is we've said, if you see something coming in on northern on talk group 700, and bridge it to IP site connect number 2, 3, 4, 5, but not to number 6. And we have these things called link IDs. You don't have to worry about these, but that's what tells me how to put all the little patch cords in. It's like an old telephone operator. I'm patching this to this and this to that. And we do this. So if a call comes in on time slot 1, talk group 700, we just use descriptive labels. And which camera am I on? Am I over here? I'm over there. I don't have a tally light, and that's why I never know where I'm talking to. Just talk, okay. So we bridge these together to send them out to all the places. Now, what's this little purple one here on the right? I showed, well, if this was a call on Central, talk group 720, we would pull it off the Central IP Site Connect because this is where our main, okay, this line here that I can't seem to do a horizontal pan is where we expect 720. But we're also going to take it down here to talk group 720, the same talk group on the Lookout Mountain UHF repeater. So we put that together. And then, okay, so the way I'm doing that is I showed you these link IDs here. And this is down in the lower right here is the place where we're putting everything together on 720. So we've looked and said every repeater out of our 50 repeaters capable, how are we putting these all together? And the net result is this is an actual for Central that we've got on, oops, good thing that isn't working. So here's our table. We want to put all these things together. So the first one up here is 4. You see up there, if you can read that, it says link ID 4 and it's in yellow. And we're putting link ID 12 and 14 and 20, all of those together so that when you key on talk group 720 Central, it's going out to all these places. The world is going to light up a little bit like a Christmas tree here. And this is our bridge and view and things in here. So as I mentioned, I don't know, with Willem said there would be a test at the end, and he sent the blue booklets down. But as I said here, when you're completed the exam, give your booklet to Willem. I don't know how we're going to grade this.
He loves grading. He'll figure it out.
He'll figure it out, and maybe he's going to use his teaching assistants, Doug, Tristan, and Paul. So here's a test question. We go on here and we misprogram our radio. We've never done that, have we? No. John's sitting there saying, I've never done that twice in one day. And instead of 720, I put in 777. I made up something. That is not a valid talk group. Don't write that down. Don't put that in your radio. Don't be that guy. So in the extra credit question down here in the purple box, can I make a call on talk group 777 through Thoridan, like it's green up there? Will it work? What do people think? And I think we can unmute Zoom if people want to chime in from remotely, but is it going to work?
I know the answer. Can I answer it?
Does anybody else want to say yes, no? Is it going to work? Okay.
I'll say yes.
Mark says yes, it's going to work.
Nobody will receive it unless they're on a 777. But it will go through the system.
He says we can establish a call, and it will only be heard if you're also listening to 777. How far in this example, wrong button again, I've got my thing up here and down here. To what extent? Which repeaters?
The only repeaters that it will
This
go
piece
through
is
are the
a
repeaters.
factual for 720. You need
We
a
have
microphone if you're
someone
going
wants to answer
I
over
have a
here.
mic. You should be able to hear me, correct? Okay.
Okay.
The only repeaters that will hear it are the repeaters connected to the master that you are talking to. So say
This
I
line.
happen to be in Montrose and I came up on 777, it would pass 777 back to Thoridan. Thoridan would pass it to the repeaters under it, and it would stop there. The CBridge would see it as an undefined talk group, and it would drop it.
Correct, except for one point. Do you have an answer back there? Did you get a microphone? Yes, you do.
It wasn't an answer. I was actually going to ask, don't you have to have the 777 programmed into the repeaters?
No.
I'm glad you asked that. The answer is no. The repeaters do not do any filtering, do not respond to particular talk groups or not, unlike a trunking system. You're thinking like the state trunking, DTRS. They have really expensive servers, controllers at every site. And if we were to do that on DMR, I believe the last I saw, that controller is about 20,000 per site for us. So that's why we don't do it. So what John said is essentially correct, but minor, so we kick up 777. Don't look over my shoulder. We kick 777 on Thoriton. It's going to send it out to all of these repeaters on the top row. It is not going to send it to these because those are connected by the CBridge, and the CBridge is looking to this time slot repeater to say, if I see a call on 720, I'm going to bridge it over to all these other places. If I don't see, get a microphone. Okay, you got one. If I don't see 720, I'm not going to send it anywhere. But everything always goes out to these repeaters. And before I go over to Tristan, what did John say that was a mistake? Did anybody pick up on it? And he's pretty damn knowledgeable of this stuff. I don't know if he misspoke. He said that call is going to go to Thoriton, and Thoriton is going to send it out to all the other places.
No, I said it's going to send it out to the repeaters connected directly to it. That's it.
Well, you also said to Thoriton to send out. So if he said it's going to send it to Thoriton where the CBridge lives, and then the CBridge sends it out to these
It will
ones
not.
down below,
So let me
he would be
also,
100% correct.
let me make another note. If you're
He's
trying
got a
to
mic,
use,
Tristan.
I have a mic. If you're trying to use a talk group that is not designed on the system, you're going to be getting a phone call from us.
Well, because it's going to go to places you didn't expect.
It's going to do
Or
weird things.
it might go to one repeater, it might go to 5 repeaters, but it's not going to go to all, in that example, 19 repeaters.
When you're using a talk group that's not designed on the channel that you are on, nobody will hear it. It's taking up system resources, and the system will bonk anybody else trying to get in.
Yeah.
That's not good. That's why you're going to get a phone call or an email saying, stop, or we'll make sure that you're not going to use it.
And then we're going to have Des over here with her brand new radio that I keep forgetting to bring for you. I do have one for you. And she's going to say, but the light's on that's saying it's receiving a call, but I don't hear anybody. And when I go to PTT, it goes boop, a boop, which says no. And she's going to get confused. So we first to Tristan, then we'll come down front here with the mic.
I was just going to add an analogy. If you're more familiar with networking topics, you can think of an IPSC network as sort of like a hub. Really dumb, just redistributes everything that comes through it. Very basic collision detection, just in case two people key up in different sites. And then building off that, the CBridge is like your router. Right?
Like
That's actually deciding what gets connected to what and what gets to transit through the core of the network. And I'm not sure if we end up covering the point from earlier, but the call would not go to Thoriton and back, because every repeater in that network is going to be unicasting that audio to every other repeater in the network. Yes. But the CBridge will be one of those nodes. But at that point, it's going to notice that this is not a talk group that has been programmed into it and drop that call at that point.
Depending on how we do on time, I've got some slides on that. And Tristan is going to talk a little bit about what if this was a data call and where does it go? Now, if I only found out I was giving this talk like less than a week ago, so I didn't have time to write these in advance, but I didn't wait until last night. John was kind of teasing me. He goes, what are you doing this early? It's not the night before. But I should have sent these to Tristan so he could have a natural segue, but he's going to talk a little bit about what if this was a data call and where's it going to go? I think you're going to talk about that, right?
Yeah, I don't have too much to cover on the CBridge, but It does end up being somewhat similar. There's extra steps. The CBridge treats the voice and data calls pretty separately.
Yeah.
Um,
So we'll give you some pointers when we get to that. But there was another question here, or did we answer it? Grab a microphone so everybody can hear you.
It's under the big purple arrow up in the upper left.
You're saying so the central, the main cluster of repeaters, like Tristan said, kind of like being on a dumb switch, is up here on that second row. Then we have these other outliers that we can route calls to.
So is Central actually CBridge 2?
Partially.
That is, the CBridge looks at Central on CBridge 2, CBridge 6, 10, and it sorts out all of these. Wherever you see a red line, the CBridge is merging those
Do you
together.
want to explain why there's other ports there that are on, like?
You're saying why
are there other CBridge ports
Yeah,
using?
I was exactly going to go there. So remember I talked about, here's what we kind of have created, and this is an RMHAM standard. Standards are great. Everybody should have their own, and we have ours. Remember I said you can only have about 15 repeaters? That's because of capacity. And exactly what Tristan commented and John commented, when Thornton is handling this call, because it's in green, it is actually, as I said earlier, throttling up 10 parallel data streams. Well, Thornton is the hub of our RMHAM network. It's the center of our universe. And we put a lot of capacity into it. So it can handle that. But what about when a repeater out in Grand Junction throttles up a call? Grand Junction is actually sending out now 10 parallel connections, data streams. And that's running that through a microwave running from Grand Junction to the Eagle area, to the Vale area, to Mosquito, to Badger, to Devil's Head, to Squaw, back to Thornton. It works. John has done the majority of the microwave design. Kind of John and I, as the early tech leads, I focused more on the repeaters. He did a little bit on the repeaters. He focused on the microwave. I did a little bit on the microwave. He did a damn good job with running microwave for these remote mountain sites. We are throwing a lot of data from the western slope out parallel. It really fans out the most when it hits the Front Range. So what we're looking at doing is actually breaking this RMHAM Central into two. They'll probably, if you noticed in your code plug, if you go to the roaming section, there's Central East and Central West, and I think there is wide north and wide south. Yeah, so we've had to break that because the portable radio only supports, I think, 16 entries on roaming lists. We have more repeaters for it to look at than the radio can handle. So we had to break it into two, and you just have to know, if I'm driving on 720 Central, if I'm driving up to the ski areas, we set the Continental Divide or the Eisenhower-Johnson tunnels as the point that, hey, I need to switch my radio. We're probably going to have to break this apart for network loading purposes. But there's also another condition. You notice down here, and you probably can't see it, we have, I got to stand very close, Lookout Mountain UHF. Why did we pull that apart? Well, the reason is Lookout Mountain UHF has Lookout Local. You've probably seen that in the code plug. And it also has, obviously, Central 720. Remember my comment about the Rockettes? Everything on an IP site connect, on a horizontal line, has to go together. That horizontal line up there is 700 Rocky Mountain wide and central. But that's not what Lookout has. So what we do is we create a new IP site connect down here. And we actually, if I was live, I could go in and show you, but we go in and say, if you're on time slot 1, we expect, I don't know what the thing is, talk group 720. And if you're on time slot 2, and link that to all the other 720s. And if you're on time slot 2, we're going to go to something else. Maybe we're going to go to the Southern network. That's different than this horizontal line, so we have to create a new IP site connect with 2 bridges off of it. And we did that with sites like Lookout Mountain, with West Creek, with sites like Boulder is different in that regard. Whenever it's not the normal, we're carrying Rocky Mountain and 1 regional, we do that. Is that a scratch or a question, Glenn? Scratch. That's a scratch, okay.
Doug,
so,
how come you have something in there that says EOSS1 UHF?
because there's something that exists at EOSS1 UHF, but you're saying tell them why
is
what
it there?
those are.
Why is it
Okay.
separate?
So you're going to see down on the bottom here, that's a good question, John. There are some, if you could read this eye chart. What's on the very top? E. It's like going to your eye doctor. So down here we have EOSS Portable 1, Portable 2, QRV2 UHF, QRV2 VHF, W0VG SAL1 system on wheels, and soon you'll see in here QRV3, QRV4. We've placed all of our transportable things in a separate area of the CBridge. It's a little mixed up right now because we kind of had a little bit of a fire drill. Our neighbors and good friends to the north in Wyoming DMR, who has a virtually identical CBridge, ours does 50 IP site connects, theirs does 30. But their server went up in smoke. And they run a little different network than we do, that every repeater is its own unique IP site connect, and they do all of their bridging in the CBridge. Well, when it went up in smoke, they were their 15 or so repeaters became an archipelago of 15 isolated repeaters. So they called us up and said, help, can we anchor on your CBridge while we get ours fixed? Well, we just got it fixed, 6 months later.
Yeah, last Monday.
And John and I drove it up to Cheyenne, Wyoming, put it in, and it came right up, and they said, hey, this is great, and they migrated back over. So now we're going to jumble around, redistribute our bridge a little bit. And, so these nodes down here on the bottom, the QRVs, remember I said in this upper example, I'm on Thornton, and I'm sending the calls out and back, and I have to throttle up 10 simultaneous parallel data streams. Well, if that's through...
That's 800K.
Is it 80K
80K per connection.
I thought it was 50, okay. So 800K, what if that's through a Verizon or a Sprint air card? Let me use Sprint, because they don't exist by that name. So we'll use a fictitious network, Sprint. 800K, is that possible? Probably. Are we going to get really reliable, regularly scheduled ticks like the Rockettes? Or are the Rockettes going to be going kick, 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 kick? Maybe this is Starlink. We're putting Starlink on all of our QRVs. So we put the QRV in its own separate category. It's a unique IP site connect such that if we're going to roll the vehicle, we'll look at where is this thing going. If it's going to go to, I got Des, right here, Castle Rock, right? So you're probably going to want the thing on Rocky Mountain Wide and Southern. So we throttle up one of these and we put in a patch that says time slot 1, put it on Rocky Wide, time slot 2, put it on the Southern 719. This is why I got to know the numbers, because they don't use names in here, they use numbers. And now you're at most handling 2 data streams if both are active at the same time, and it's pretty reliable. We actually had this happen. One of our really smart guys with network routing, James Sizek, KI0KN, he's also our section emergency coordinator, built one of these for an event, and he was simply hanging off the IP site connect, and he's like, this isn't working. And then I realized what was going on, because I was at a different place in the event, and he realized, and we said, we got to change this. And we actually, I think we, as I recall, we remapped it on the fly.
That's what started SAL 1 on there.
And, you know, so you're saying, why did we call it SAL? What do we call these repeater systems on wheels? A SAL. And the cellular industry talks about cell on wheels, a cow. And they have Colts, cell on light truck. They have goats, generator on a trailer. They do have systems on wheels, which is a cell site with some pieces of the serving core network. There's a rat, too. Oh, there's a rat. Repeater on a trailer. So do you guys want a rat, or do you want a sow? Or do you want a colt? I think I want a colt. We don't have Broncos, though. So that's why these are a little different. Okay, and I'm going to try to pick up so that we're done on time. So this is just a sample. If I bring up Rocky Mountain, I'm again on the Thornton.
Notice that the lines are on the
initiating.
top on this one instead of on the bottom where they were on the other one.
Because Thornton is time slot 1, but not in every case.
No.
But most every. If for some reason, I should use the thing for the people online. If one of these, come on, one of these repeaters down here, we define time slot 2 to be 700, you'd see that particular instance on the bottom. It only goes on that one repeater. We tried to keep it simple so that your brain wouldn't explode, because my brain explodes when this gets too complicated, and when it's too complicated,
it just won't work.
It just won't work when it's too complicated. So, does this make sense to everybody? Anybody online with questions or here in the room with questions? Okay.
So I just wanted to clarify something, because I think we said 2 different things. When you're just talking about IP Site Connect, we have a master and a bunch of peers. What actually happens, if I heard it correctly, is that the master, all of the peers connect to the master and learn about everybody else in that IP Site Connect group. When you key up on one of the peers, that peer actually sends a stream to each of the other peers as well as the master, right? So whoever is receiving the RF transmission sends it directly to all of the others. It doesn't send it to first the master, and then the master sends.
The master does not redistribute. You're correct, Willem, and that's why a QRV would have to send this out to 15 parallel places in theory, and we don't want to do that.
So,
and I have an example. I have a graphic for that, but I'll let you continue, Willem.
And so where the IP Site Connect sort of bridges all of these is that the IP Site Connect shows up as just one of the peers. And so instead of receiving a system or a signal over RF, it receives an IP stream from one of the other receiving peers, and then acts as if it is receiving that RF stream, and then retransmits it to all of the other ports. And so it looks like it is a client in all of the other clusters or whatever we call an IP Site Connect group. And so all of those other groups then see those retransmits that. Did
Yeah,
I explain that correctly?
I think you're talking about, when you said the IP Site Connect, you're talking about the CBridge that I'm highlighting on your screen here.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
Yes.
dropped off
So
on that. Right, the CBridge then acts as clients to all of
Yes.
the other IP Connect clusters.
That's exactly the case. So we talked about masters and peers, but the master peer is only to create the routing table. And on a point being that I think is important, once that routing table is created for an IP Site Connect here, it stays with the repeater until it's either updated or rebooted. That repeater is rebooted, or an IP address changes. I guess if they change, thankfully, John and Willem don't change our IP address. They may change the routing of how it gets there.
That's automatic.
But they don't change the IP address. So if we turned on Thoradin, got all that second line together, and then Thoradin goes away, the Thoradin repeater, will this still work?
Yeah,
It'll work on everything but Thoradin.
It keeps talking.
Until we get a power glitch out at Vail, that one is now going to go offline. When it comes back up, it says, I can't get a routing table. It's not going to know what to do with itself.
That'll be standalone.
So it'll just be a standalone repeater. So what Willem said is correct, and I do have a graphic for that. Tristan, did you have before we go to Dean?
No, I think covered everything that I was going to add.
Okay. We'll send it to K2AD in the audience here.
Yeah, thanks. I have a question about when an IPSC master connects to the CBridge, does it report all of its configured peers or just the ones that are connected at that time? So
Only the ones connected.
So only the ones connected. So when, in this case here, when CBridge 2 on our graphic here logs in, so the master is just going to be sitting there, and when we turn the CBridge on, it goes out on the first IP Site Connect on the top and says, hey, Buckhorn, I'm CBridge 1, I'm here. I want you to know about me so that people route calls to me.
It becomes a peer.
It becomes a peer so that calls are routed to it. And then the CBridge says, hey, Central, I'm here, I'm CBridge 2. Here's my unique radio number. I want you to route calls to me now on these time slots. IPSC 3, Southern, I'm here, I'm CBridge 3. I want to join your routing table, so that the CBridge is actually acting like 50 virtual repeaters in a server. And now we're doing all of this juggling of, well, I got to take 700 and send it to all these places. I've got to take 719, send it to these, 720 to these. There's a lot of data processing going on in that box.
So if a if a peer is offline, disconnected or powered off, then you have no way to know that it exists or ever existed.
Got to
That's
use
correct.
the thing. So if
the DNS is in the master. I have a mic. The DNS is in the master. The master remembers who was out there. You have to authenticate with the master as a peer. That master remembers who was out there. If you've never checked into that master, it doesn't know about you. There's no way to configure it. Only checking in, which is computer to computer. You give it a passcode, it goes out and hooks itself up. If you power cycle the master, it starts over and does it again.
let me give a little more and maybe a little simpler. I don't know. Maybe it's more complicated. Let's say we turn Burlington off after a period of time. Burlington's going to fall off the table. The master repeater periodically sends an update. I don't remember whether it's every minute or 5 minutes, but its initial job is when it first comes on, hey everybody, check in with me. and then it does welfare checks every 5 minutes. If somebody goes away, it says, hey, everybody, Maxwell went away. We put him on mute. I know that's hard to do, but
I have the mute button.
he's got the unmute is the problem. So he'll go away and you won't send your data to him anymore. And then when it comes back, checks in with the master and the master says, hey, everybody, we've got a new friend in the sandbox here. And you probably noticed, you can't point the other way.
Really long question right here.
Yeah, you can't, you notice, I lost my thought. There's this yellow down here. That means these have not been heard from. Okay, what's the long question?
So I'm going to read this to you, and we're going to need to parse this. Travis says, are CBridge to CBridge connections truncated, meaning the data streams smaller between the CBridges and then fans out to each connected local CBridge network? I can understand why mobile devices are CBridges, then not clients of a parent CBridge network.
Okay.
I understand the first half of that. I do not understand
I think
the
I
second.
understand, I certainly understand the first half. And my question back, or my answer to Travis would be, how do you know about CBridge to CBridge connections? But they do exist. And the answer is that my understanding is it's not a parallel data stream. It is trunked going between these.
Correct.
But
Yeah, that's correct. It's single point-to-point
Yeah.
transport of the voice or data.
and we're sending what needs to be sent through that. It's essentially a virtual, another IPSC. Yes.
Yeah.
So, okay, what was the second half of his question?
He says, I can understand why mobile devices are CBridges then and not clients of a parent CBridge network, hub and spoke essentially. I still don't understand the second part. Mobile devices are not CBridges.
Yeah,
Correct.
I think I might know what he's asking.
Give it a try, Tristan.
There's no CBridge in the comm trailer.
Yeah, so like John just said, we don't put CBridges into any of our mobile equipment. What we do instead is we basically have a two-member IPSC network where the CBridge plays one role, I forget which one, and the repeater in the comm trailer or the QRV plays the other. And so that is not the same as a CBridge link, but as far as traffic bandwidth is concerned, it's just about as good. What we really wanted to avoid is having a truck somewhere be part of a 14-member IPSC network where it's going to have to send out 14 copies of anything originating from that truck, and that's where we get the problems with cellular or satellite links out in the field. Feel free to follow up in the comments if that answers your question or if you have any others.
Yeah. And that's a good point. And
He says, understood, thank you.
This is why I like having
Excellent.
people
Thank you for your
smarter than
question.
me in the room. One of the other things here is the CBridge. Tristan touched on the roles, the role in an IP Site Connect. There's a master and a peer. The master could be the CBridge. The CBridge is capable of being a master actor. And at which point the CBridge, you're going to see it moves the CBridge. If I did it on CBridge 1 or the first IP Site Connect, CBridge 1 will pop into that first location. And now the CBridge is going to collect all the routing information and send it all out through its links with, this is the network topography. We've chosen to leave our masters in the field and distribute. The reason for that is if the CBridge is the master and I lose the connection to the master, my network fragments immediately. This is belt and suspenders. Whereas Wyoming, they have the CBridge at the center of all their network. They have a belt, and that's it.
They also have very small pipes going out to the world, so they did the right design for what they had.
Yes and no. I really like the way we did it, where we've put in clusters, and then we connect those 6 or 8 repeaters together because, and I've got a slide for that. So let me pick up the pace. Okay, the rubber hits the road.
One more question, Doug.
Yes.
from Paul Deeth. If a site repeater has no activity for several days, does it drop off the system?
No.
Nope,
It
not if
stays.
the IP, so the question was, were you on mic?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't need to repeat the question. So if the IP connection is functional and it's checking in with its keep alive packets, it'll stay there and active, and which is not the case with things like Brandmeister. So the rubber hits the road. What do you need to know about this? If you are programming a radio, go get a code plug. Go find this guy, Mike Conga. Look at his talk. It's only for Chinese radios, but if you have a commercial radio, same principles. And if you are going to build your own code plug, hello, one of our dispatchers. And you're going to go to the RMHAM website and you're going to see something like this. And this is going to tell you every repeater, every frequency, every time slot, and every color code that you need to put in your radio to get on, in this example, Central. And by the way, the map on the website is old. We've got to update because I don't, this one I even made a mistake. I put Grand Junction on, which you didn't have, John. And I guess we have one down here. But yours has, what is that one out? Rangeley, on, that I forgot to put on this map. So we've got pretty extensive coverage. So you can build your code plug. Okay, and this is where we were talking about, what if our microwave fails and we can't get from point A to B? So in this example, I've got a whole bunch of repeaters out on the plains, and I have a bunch of repeaters in the high country. I drew that brick wall. There's some massive failure that we can't get across the Continental Divide. So what happens? Our IP Site Connect, which is normally all together here, breaks into two, and I called it a virtual Central East and a virtual Central West. These are not the real names. If you go to Mike's talk, you're not going to find these in your code plug. But what happens is when your radio is on Central and you say, well, I'm out near Vail, and you select the Vail repeater or any repeater near there, and you go to 720 and you key up, you're going to hear bleep, and you're going to think you're talking across the whole network. But we've got this massive wall blocking us. So just keep that in mind. You can use the repeater on the Vail side, and you can use the repeater on the Lyman side, for example, but you can't talk to each other. So, yeah, what was once a big island becomes an archipelago, a whole bunch of islands. Okay, and I'm running a little over on time. Other networks. There's a lot of DMR networks out there. And again,
before you go on, Doug, let me just jump in with something else. That's one of our big projects for the near future. Is right now we have one way over the Continental Divide. And if we lose that, then what Doug just describes is exactly what happens. So what we're working towards is redundancy, to have another jump across the Continental Divide, so that if we lose one of them, by the magic of automatic rerouting using OSPF, that all of the traffic will flow down the other pipe across the Continental Divide. So that's one of our big projects for next year.
Yep, and I have a slide that I'll spend about 5 seconds on to talk about that. Since I'm running over on my time, there's a lot of DMR networks out there, and this one's kind of important. People say, can I get on Brandmeister? Can I get on TGIF? And yes, with some limited capabilities. I stole these two black slides here from an old Tapper presentation, and it listed the other DMR networks. Hey, we made the list. We made the list, but we don't maintain full connectivity with these. We do not have a full-scale bridge that takes lots of things over. We have a couple of little rope bridges, and we'll talk about that. So you can go to the Brandmeister site and hear all of the great things they do, but we don't fully support Brandmeister because the Brandmeister servers are remote from us. They are internet connected. We have no management or influence. I don't want to use the word control, but we get what we get. They are best effort with their performance to us. Rocky Mountain Ham is purpose-built. We want the network to function as much as possible in the worst of conditions. I don't think putting all of our call processing in a server in California, Texas, Miami, or Boston. There's really smart people in those places, but it's a long way to get to, so we haven't done that. The other piece is we have identified a goal, but we have not implemented completely implemented access mode agnostic approach. We've said we really don't care. We always talk about talk group 720. Isn't it more than DMR? We're starting to move slowly towards being able to bridge from DMR talk group 720 over to potentially D-Star, whatever kind of link, or to a fusion, because it's really about the content of the channel, not the name of the channel. So we're working on that. Pros here, I said, okay, we do support DMR roaming like they said down below, but the cons, you can probably, this is a biggie, and I think Tristan's going to get into this. I hope he is. They talk about private calls and also data calls are down here. Maybe I didn't mention it, but automatic transmission of GPS, that's a data call. Those aren't identified in your radio. That's like you picked up the mic and go, hey, I'm here. You never gave your call sign. The data transmission has no way to really give your call sign. Now, we've dreamed of saying, well, we're going to take an APRS packet that is identified to the world as from AX25. That's a protocol that you can identify within the protocol. But we haven't done that yet. And until we do, some of these nifty features that, like an SMS, if I send Tristan an SMS that said, are you going to be at Rocky Mountain Ham? How are the roads? And he sends back, they're great. Do you want me to get you some coffee? Neither of us identified our transmitter. Now, if at the end of the packet, if I put K2AD, and at the end of his SMS he puts NM0TH, we'd be legal. Most people aren't doing that. So, but we do have some limited connectivity to Brandmeister. We are considering whether we want to keep this active or not, or whether we want to implement a little different strategy. The jury's still out. They're in deliberation. But right now, we take the 3 regional talk groups and we transition them over to Brandmeister onto these 3 Brandmeister identifiers. And if you're a Brandmeister aficionado, and if I had more time, I'd throttle up Conga to say, what are those? But in Brandmeister speak, those are local repeaters. Brandmeister thinks that this is an individual single repeater. They don't quite know that when you send something to Central Regional Talk Group 720 or to 310801, that it's actually going out to 19 repeaters. And we've been told if the management of Brandmeister knew what we were doing, they would probably shut us down. So if you're watching on this video, we're not trying to do anything nefarious. We're just trying to connect our regional. Why are we doing it this way? Because we can't get Talk Group 720 recognized on their network. So therefore, we've had to do this. It's almost the equivalent of a network address translation, if you're in the IP world, to send our bridge between them through this DMZ of sorts. The same thing applies to your user identifiers. We don't care what user identifier you use on Rocky Mountain Ham, with some exceptions. We just want it to be unique. And if you are going to use something unique, register it with us. But the problem is we're bridging all of our traffic over to Brandmeister. And if you picked up a radio ID at random that was perhaps the late King of Jordan, JY1's identifier, they might go, why are you impersonating King Hussein? He passed away. So we're looking into this, and also the radioid.net that we send you to is saying, hey, everybody gets one. There's a shortage, everybody gets one. If you talk to Dr. Willem, he's going to say, but we're only using 2 to 3% of the entire space for IDs. Why have we created an artificial shortage? And it's a complicated question, but it's because they tried to come up with a worldwide numbering system that everybody had a chance of getting some IDs.
And they've since thrown it out, pretty much.
Well, not completely, but so now we've run out of, and the short answer is they based it on this thing called an MZ or an IMEI. And those of you that are knowledgeable in the cellular world know that's an International Mobile Equipment Identification, or MZ, an International Mobile Subscriber Information, I think. It's your cell phone number. But those numbers are more than just your phone number. It's more than 303-555-1212. They've got to put a bunch of numbers on the front to say this is United States. And that number in my phone, I'm not positive, Mark would know, is I believe 310012. 3100 starts the United States. Do you notice what our numbers are?
3108.
3108. Colorado is the 8th. Well, it's not the 8th. California, they gave 3 numbers to. They started with Alabama, 3101. Alaska, 3102. Arizona, 3103. Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Arkansas. California got 3. Because they said there's a lot of hams out there. Colorado, 8. 3108. That leaves us with CBridge talk and Motorola talk, only 2 digits for repeaters. So we can only have 99 repeaters in Colorado. And then we can only have 3 digits for users. We're going to have more than 999 users in Colorado. So now what happens? So they've got to come up with a new identifier because we reserved a whole bunch of identifiers for Tuvalu where I don't even know if they have DMR. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. But the same thing happened with internet, IP addresses, and domains. Have you ever seen the .tv? That was Tuvalu. Do they still have .tv? I don't know. That was Tuvalu. And they sold their address space because they didn't have that many people on Tuvalu. I wish I knew what the call sign prefix was. But so Radio ID's solution was, we're not going to change the whole system. We're going to limit. Well, what do we do when we have 50 cache radios? They say, oh, you can have 1 ID. You don't need more than 1. But the problem with DMR is a transmitting radio and a receiving radio. The receiving radio, they're on the same identifier. They know not to listen to themselves. So if I have 2 radios with the same ID, I can, if I'm sitting here, or maybe it's me and Dave, and you guys are listening, you'll hear me, all of you. You'll hear Dave, you'll think it's one person, but we can't talk to each other because our radio says, I don't talk to myself. I do talk to myself occasionally, and occasionally I argue with my foot, but that's beside the point. So we're looking at what do we do because we are linked into Brandmeister, we're saying you need a radioid.net. And if you don't, and even though our central talk group, our northern, is somewhat isolated, there's a mole, there's a leak. So stay tuned, we're trying to figure it out. And we do have some interoperability on another public service announcement. On Monday night, we're going to have the ARRL section net. And they carry that on the Fun Machines, on Colorado Connection, some of the Northern Colorado Amateur Radio Clubs, the Mountain Amateur Radio Club networks, and Rocky Mountain Ham on our wide 700. How do we do all that? We're back to cheese. We have bridges that put all of these modes together and distribute it out. So it comes across All-Star from Colorado Connection. We have a simple thing in the middle here where we have a mobile radio sitting on Rocky Talk Group 700 that goes into one of these digital interfaces for analog repeaters that we connect into Connection, we connect into Fun Machines. We're looking at doing a similar digital bridge, but we just haven't gotten there yet. So, if you've ever been to IKEA, you probably you're sitting there saying, we're right about here, Tristan's on, are we ready for the Yenvog, the shortcut? And all I'm going to do is say just a real quick on this picture because I spent a lot of time doing it. This is one method to do the Rocky Mountain Ham backbone. That's not the way we did it. But with this is everything is hub and spoked. Oops. What John actually came up with, and Willem and I and others, is something more like this, where we have loops going around, and some things are hub and spoked, some things are not. So when we do a simple call flow here, I keep going to a point, but I'm doing a simple, I'm bringing up a call on Talk Group 720, and I'm on this virtual cloud, which is IP Site Connect 2. That's pretty simple. Goes from one to the other, we route the packets over. But what happens when I do it on Talk Group 720 in this example? I'm bringing my call up here. Remember we said on an IP Site Connect, that repeater generates these streams, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 streams coming out of this repeater, but it's also got to go up to here to get it through, and that's in a well, no, that's the same IP Site Connect. Where am I? Well, somewhere in here. Oh, we're going up to this top one. So that call has to go to the CBridge, go through our backbone, our core, go to our VPN, where maybe this is like the repeater in Burlington that's internet linked. That's how we're getting it out there. And if we're on a VPN internet link, John, we're putting a lot of traffic on Burlington when we go, so we should think about that. But now you're ready for your head to explode? What happens if I do this on 700? Boy, you know, where's the little, okay, so on this one, the call's down here. So we're doing all this routing in this cloud. We're still sending it up to here, and now we've sent it over to there. Getting pretty messy, isn't it? Now I throw in what we actually have. Some of the packets are coming down through this route. Some of the packets are up here. Some are going through. How do I get to this guy? Do I go through this one, go through that one? That's where Dr. Schroeder comes in. And he says, oh, I've got open shortest path first, OSPF. You don't need to worry about it. I'm worrying about it. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. It just works. So, and in this final one, I've added another connection to the CBridge to go to the Brandmeister network. And what we do is we put a patch in the CBridge, and that stuff goes out. So I went over on time, apologized to Tristan. Any questions while he's coming up to get set up? Glenn's got a question. And why don't you give the mic to Glenn, and Tristan, you can get ready to come on line while we change the stage set here.
Yes, you said you had some outages where you were down to 95%. What makes up those outages? Is it just links go down, or weather, or other things?
Yeah, we get a microwave fade because we don't have as good a path. Maybe a dish blows off axis, and I'm on a side lobe, so my data rates are going down. It could be, tower crews up there and somebody stands in front of our dish, which is pretty rare, but for whatever reason, if data starts to move at a slower rate, normally our links will do 10 megabits at a minimum. Some of them are 50 to 100, and that's a lot of data. But if we're sitting down near 10 megabits and our partners on Qualcomm are running all their data traffic through, Fun Machines are on and running theirs. Now ours, we're not always getting enough on the data channel. So, we are going to go to a break, I'm told, for 10 minutes. And are there any other questions or nothing from online?
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break, which means it's 10:08, which says we're going to come back at about quarter after, so that we're really there for 10:18.